We have significant news on the NHL this morning. The NHL valuations from Sportico for 2024 is out, and the values continue to skyrocket. How will this affect expansion, and why is it not affecting the salary cap more? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some pretty significant news on the NHL and team values. We get a report annually from a publication called Sportico, which covers the business side of sports, analyzing values of NHL franchises. Sometimes we get reports like this from Forbes as well. And in the last year, according to their new report that came out today, valuations of NHL franchises are up 37%. Values of NHL teams continue to skyrocket. This is going to have a major effect on future NHL expansion fees, and you have to wonder why it's not having more of an impact on the NHL salary cap. Now, just to give you some of the data from this report, all 32 NHL franchises are now valued over $1 billion. That is the first time that we've seen that happen. We now have two teams over and north of $3 billion. Really, we're just about to 3, and we have 8 teams over $2 billion, including all of our, or most of our original 6 franchises. So let's take a look at a quick breakdown here by franchise. I'll go through the list quickly from the most valuable down to the least, and look at the increase year over year. The Toronto Maple Leafs continue to be the NHL's most valuable franchise, according to Sportico, now valued at $3.66 billion, up 38% from a year ago. The New York Rangers, another original 6 team, is number 2 at $3.25 billion, up 33% from a year ago. The Montreal Canadiens, which at one point, I think it was about, maybe 20 years ago, they had a hard time getting that team sold. And at this point now, who wouldn't want to own them? At $2.95 billion. Of course, the original 6 franchise, third ranked now in the NHL. 29% increase year over year. So essentially, they're not technically $3 billion, but they're basically right there. So to have 3 teams that high is pretty impressive. Of course, the next group that takes us from the high end of the 2s down to just below 2 are mostly a lot of our older teams, original 6 teams, and some very valuable franchises as well, including Boston, which sits 4th at $2.67 billion. They've increased 50% in the last year. That's a substantial increase, one of the bigger ones we've seen. The Los Angeles Kings are next at $2.5 billion, up 45%. The Chicago Blackhawks, another original 6, at $2.45 billion, up 33%. The Edmonton Oilers, of course, on the backs of Connor McDavid and the Stanley Cup run that they had last year, falling short in Game 7, but it still had a significant impact on the overall team value, $2.4 billion, up 51%. That's a substantial increase. The Philadelphia Flyers are next at $2.29 billion, up 35%. The Washington Capitals are your first team under $2 billion now, so $1.86 billion, 31% increase from last year. The Red Wings are next after them, $1.85 billion, up 35%. The Lightning, $1.8 billion, up 44%. This is insane. Vegas, $1.77 billion, up 36%. The Canucks come next, $1.73 billion, up 44%. Then we get the Devils at $1.7 billion, 47% increase year over year. The New York Islanders, I'm surprised, to be honest, considering that I guess it's only more recent that they've started to struggle a bit with attendance, but, considering the team hasn't done phenomenal the past couple of years, but they do have a new building, which is probably having a major impact on this year, about $1.68 billion, up 49% year over year. The Dallas Stars are $1.65 billion, up 49% as well. The Minnesota Wild come next, $1.6 billion, up 36%. The Flames in Calgary, $1.58 billion, up 39%. The Avalanche just shy of that, $1.57 billion, up 34%. The Penguins come next at $1.47 billion, up 37%. The Seattle Kraken, a fairly new franchise, $1.46 billion, up 30%. The Sharks, $1.42 billion, up 34%. Nashville up to $1.32 billion, a 33% increase year over year. St. Louis sits at $1.3 billion, up 35%. Now we're getting into some of the smaller markets, but still some really good teams here. Carolina, $1.29 billion, up 32%. Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers, $1.25, up 37%. I'm a little surprised that didn't go up even more, to be honest. The Ducks are next at $1.24 billion, a 27% increase, one of the smaller jumps we've seen. The Utah franchise now sits at $1.2 billion. They are the biggest gain over year. Of course, when they were still in Arizona, they were significantly lower value than this. They have a 78% increase now based on the last valuation, which came as the Arizona Coyotes. The Ottawa Senators are next at $1.14 billion, 20% increase. Of course, they are one of the more recent teams to be sold. Of course, Utah, the most recent. But the 1.14, they sold around $900 million. So even Michael Andlauer has made a couple $100 million in just over 1 year that he's been owner of the franchise. The Sabres, $1.13 billion, are next at 26% increase. Rounding things out at the 31st, we have the Winnipeg Jets at $1.1 billion, only up 19%. I mean, that's still a great gain in 1 year, but it's one of the lower numbers. And then Columbus at $1.06 billion, a 20% increase. So look at all these gains. I mean, really, you know, when you're complaining about a 20% gain in your investment, and that's crazy, because that is still very significant. But to have some of these teams like Boston and Edmonton jump, over 50%. We knew Utah was going to take a tremendous jump forward, of course, based on its sale price. What the Ryan Smith Group bought from Arizona, we knew that was going to be, pretty close to what they ended up being valued at here. Edmonton had a significant increase. Just crazy, It's not all the original 6 teams at the very top. I know a few years ago, I think the top 6 spots were all original 6 now. Not so much. Like I said, we have 8 teams over the $2 billion mark. We have 2 just shy of 3 over the $3 billion mark. Absolutely crazy. Now, when you see these numbers, and with all the recent talk about NHL expansion, even though it's not officially opened and a for sure thing, it is something that is on the horizon, and it's something that a lot of people do expect to happen. A lot of well-connected, smart NHL people think that the NHL will eventually go from 32 to 36 teams. That if you look at this, your average team is now $1.8 billion, and when you're seeing 30+% gains per year, do you think that they're going to be asking, expansion fees under $2 billion? I honestly can't see it. If you think about most teams are going to be coming in with a brand new building, right? So from the real estate part of it's going to be brand new. You're going to have an exciting new market with all kinds of major merchandise opportunities. I just don't see how the NHL is going to go into expansion and be asking for less than $1.8 billion, but most likely $2. Could it even be more than that? You have to think. I mean, and you know what? When the franchises do be granted expansion opportunities here, doesn't mean we don't know for sure we're going to get 4 more teams. But if we do, they probably don't come all at once. I suspect they'll probably do 2 and then a few years later do 2 more. If they don't come in at the same time and under the same process, it's possible that the first 2 might pay less than the next 2. Like every time, look at what Vegas paid, $500 million. And this team is only in the league since 2018. It's not, or 2017-18 season. It's not even that long ago, right? And look at the Kraken. They don't have that long of a history, and they've jumped. They went to $650 million. Now they're $1.46 billion. So anybody that's I don't think it's going to shy these people away from wanting to own a franchise. You get a franchise, if this continues, you might pay $2 billion, and then in 5 years, it might be worth $3 billion, and you're up $1 billion. That's insane. So clearly, you have to think as well that the owners continue to get richer off these valuations, off the league doing so well. At what point are the players and, they're going to push for more of a salary cap impact here? Because clearly, I know that league revenues are one of the big factors, and by far the biggest factor that kind of determined the salary cap here. But, at some point, because we're not that far away from a CBA negotiation, I can understand that the players are definitely going to be pushing to have at least a piece of the expansion fee money. And then you have to think it all with all those valuations, like they're going to probably push for a bigger piece of the pie. Because even at 50-50, look, the owners are still raking in all this money. Like, it's absolutely crazy. So could that affect, what NHL player salaries could be in a few years? If they push it hard enough in a CBA negotiation, it could be, for sure. Obviously, even if it's not part of the salary cap, for the players to get a bigger piece of expansion money, because right now it's zero. And then at the same time, like I said, I suspect that this is going to affect the valuations are going to push NHL expansion fees to be at least $2 billion. Like, I wouldn't have thought that a few years ago. With the last 2-3 years, we've seen such exponential growth. It's absolutely crazy. So let me know your thoughts on this new report from Sportico, the values. Where do you see expansion fees going? And while we're at it, since we're talking expansion, which markets are the most likely going to get that first crack and to maybe have one of these final 4 NHL teams? Because I'm not sure they'll ever expand beyond 36 unless you have to see a team move for whatever reason. That might be the only way to really get a team beyond that. So let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.